They didn't need a wand. They used their words. They didn't need potions. They used betrayal. And you didn't even know they cast something dark on your name while hugging you with fake love. You ever felt cursed, but couldn't explain why? Like there was this invisible weight pressing down on your chest every morning? Like no matter how hard you prayed, how much you forgave, how many times you tried to rise, something kept pulling you back down into that familiar pit of exhaustion? Have you ever been betrayed by the very people you protected, gaslighted by the ones you called family, discarded by those you poured your heart into and still chosen to love them anyway? And now you wonder, did God even see any of it? Listen to me, chosen one. What if I told you that every sleepless night, every stabbing betrayal, every moment you felt spiritually suffocated wasn't random? What if those people didn't just hurt you, they actually cast a spiritual weight on your soul? You weren't just misunderstood, you were spiritually marked. They locked trauma in their silent prayers against you. They weaponized their false smiles. They sabotaged you with intentions so dark, you could feel it in rooms they'd never even entered. You felt the shift in your energy, didn't you? That heaviness that followed you home from family dinners, that exhaustion after phone calls that should have been normal. They called it just energy, but it was a curse, a spell, a binding. And you were the altar they laid their ego on. But here's the shocking truth that's about to set your spirit free. You weren't being punished, you were being positioned. They didn't break you, they revealed who they were. You weren't forgotten by heaven, you were protected by isolation. Your silence, that was divine restraint. Your tears, sacred data. Every moment you chose grace over revenge, love over bitterness. You were collecting spiritual evidence that would one day vindicate you in ways they never saw coming. You weren't the target, beloved. You were the test, and they failed miserably. Thank you to those supporting this message through your donations and super thanks. Your generosity isn't just seen, it's spiritual. You're not just giving, you're sowing light into a message that's breaking curses across the nation. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence, your time, your attention, your faith. It all matters in this sacred moment. And if you're watching this now, it's not by chance, it's by divine appointment. You didn't survive all that for nothing. You survived because heaven still needs your light. And because the spell they cast, it's about to backfire in ways that will leave them speechless. Drop I break the spell in the comments if your spirit feels this truth crawling out of the shadows and into the light where it belongs. Because what comes next will shift everything you thought you knew about why you were attacked. And now, let's go deeper. They didn't stab your back, they kissed your cheek, then whispered curses behind your name. You know that moment when the knife goes in? Not the metal kind, the invisible one. The one wrapped in birthday hugs and Christmas smiles. The one dipped in I love you but delivered with dead eyes. You felt it, didn't you? That cold slice through your spirit when the people who were supposed to protect you became the ones who hexed your very existence. See, they didn't need a cauldron. They used family dinners. They didn't need sage to burn. They burned your reputation while passing the potatoes. Every fake laugh, every forced conversation, every time they said we're just worried about you while their energy was choking the life out of your dreams. That was the ritual. That was the ceremony. And you were the sacrifice they offered up to their own insecurities. This wasn't heartbreak, chosen one. This was hexcraft, spiritual sabotage wrapped in fake smiles and holiday cards. You started shrinking, didn't you? Started second-guessing every word that came out of your mouth. Started dimming your light just to make them comfortable in their darkness. You thought it was love. You thought it was loyalty. But what you were really experiencing was energetic manipulation disguised as family obligation. They bound you with their jealousy like chains you couldn't see. Every time you tried to rise, their envy pulled you back down. Every time you tried to speak your truth, their judgment made you swallow your words. They didn't need magic books, they used silent treatment. They didn't need spells, they used guilt trips. And the cruelest part? They made you believe it was your fault. Remember Joseph? His own brothers threw him in a pit, sold him into slavery, and told their father he was dead. But here's what they didn't know. They weren't destroying Joseph. They were positioning him for a throne they could never touch. Every betrayal was a stepping stone. Every rejection was redirection from heaven itself. That's you, beloved. That's your story. You were never crazy for feeling cursed. You were cursed by their jealousy, bound by their envy, suffocated by their need to keep you small so they could feel tall. But curses only work when you don't know they exist. And right now, the veil is being ripped away from your eyes. The spell they cast wasn't just emotional manipulation, it was spiritual warfare, disguised as concern. Every time they said, "Don't get your hopes up," They were casting doubt on your destiny. Every time they rolled their eyes at your dreams, they were trying to disconnect you from your divine assignment. Every time they made you feel guilty for wanting more, they were attempting to sever the cord between you and your Creator. But here's what they forgot. You can't curse what God has blessed. You can't hex what heaven has chosen. You can't dim a light that was lit by the Almighty Himself. So when you started losing your glow, when you started questioning your worth, when you started believing their version of who you were supposed to be, that wasn't your intuition talking. That was their spell working. That heaviness in your chest, that wasn't depression, it was their energy trying to bury your resurrection. David felt it too. His own family didn't even invite him to the anointing ceremony. Samuel had to ask, "Don't you have another son?" Because sometimes the very people who share your DNA are the last ones to recognize your divinity. Sometimes the ones who raised you are the most threatened by who you're becoming. You know what breaks every spell? Recognition. The moment you see it for what it is, its power starts to crumble. The moment you stop calling it love and start calling it what it really was, energetic assault, the chains begin to break. The moment you stop making excuses for their behavior and start protecting your energy like the sacred vessel it is, the curse loses its grip. They thought they were teaching you humility, but they were really teaching you discernment. They thought they were keeping you grounded, but they were really forcing you to grow wings they could never clip. They thought they were putting you in your place, but they were really pushing you toward your purpose. Chosen one, you were never crazy. You were cursed by their jealousy, bound by their envy, and it's time to break it wide open. Every tear you cried in confusion was washing away the lies they planted. Every sleepless night was your spirit fighting for your freedom. Every moment you felt like you were losing your mind was actually your soul breaking free from their small-minded spell. The truth they didn't want you to know: your light was never the problem. Their darkness was. Your dreams were never too big. Their vision was too small. Your energy was never too much. Their capacity was too limited. You weren't being prepared for their approval, beloved. You were being prepared for your appointment. And now the spell is breaking. Can you feel it? That shift in the atmosphere? That lightness returning to your spirit? That's not wishful thinking, that's spiritual warfare in your favor. That's the universe course correcting. That's karma loading up her cannon. If they hexed your glow with their envy, type, "I take my light back" below. Because what's coming next is going to show you exactly how the universe settles scores when someone messes with one of its chosen. You know that feeling when you wake up already exhausted, when your bones ache but you haven't moved a muscle, when your heart pounds but nothing's wrong? That's not anxiety, beloved. That's not your imagination running wild in the dark. That was your spirit, fighting a war you couldn't see. They came at you with smiles. They struck you with hugs. They assassinated your peace with their good intentions and buried your joy under their fake concern. You thought it was depression creeping through your bloodstream like poison. You thought it was just you being too sensitive again. But this wasn't depression. It was a psychic attack in disguise. You weren't lazy. You were being pulled under by their spiritual projections. Every time they spoke your name with that twisted tone, every time they gathered in circles without you, whispering prayers that felt more like curses, every time they looked at you with that fake smile while their energy screamed something else entirely, they were casting invisible nets around your soul. You felt it, didn't you? That heaviness that followed you home from family dinners, that exhaustion that hit you after phone calls that should have been normal, that sudden drop in your spirit when certain people entered the room. Your body was trying to tell you what your heart didn't want to believe. You were under Ziga, not by demons, not by some ancient evil, but by the people pretending to love you while secretly feeding off your light. Energy vampires disguised as family members, emotional warfare dressed up as concern, silent sabotage wrapped in holiday cards and birthday wishes. They didn't put hands on you, but they held your future hostage with their intentions. Think about Joseph in that pit. His brothers didn't just throw him down there and walk away. They sat above him and ate lunch while he cried for help. They fed their bodies while starving his soul. They celebrated their betrayal while he bled in the darkness. Sound familiar? Your pit wasn't made of stone and sand. Your pit was made of expectations that crushed your dreams, guilt trips that stole your joy, silent treatments that suffocated your voice, gaslighting that made you question your own reality. They ate their lunch while you starved for understanding. But here's what they didn't know. That pit, it wasn't your grave. It was your preparation ground. Every sleepless night was training your spirit for warfare. Every tear was washing away what didn't belong to you. Every moment you felt like giving up was actually your soul learning how to fight in dimensions they couldn't even see. You weren't weak. You were being strengthened in secret. The exhaustion you felt, that was your spirit burning off their attachments. The confusion that clouded your mind? That was your soul refusing to accept their version of who you were supposed to be. The isolation that felt like punishment? That was divine protection pulling you away from their poisonous energy. The chain is cracking now. You feel it, don't you? That weight that's been sitting on your chest for months, maybe years. It's shifting. That fog that's been clouding your vision is starting to lift. That voice in your head that kept whispering you're not enough is getting quieter every day. Because their spell only works when you don't know it exists. But now you know. Now you see. Now you understand why you've been so tired but not tired. Heavy but not sad. Drained but not defeated. You've been fighting an invisible war, and you're about to win. Like David facing Goliath, you've been standing in front of giants that nobody else could see. Giants made of manipulation. Giants made of emotional terrorism. Giants made of spiritual suffocation. But every giant has a weak spot. And their weak spot? It's that they need your permission to stay. I revoke their access. I break their cords. I return their energy to sender. The psychic chains they wrapped around your dreams? Shattered. The emotional hooks they buried in your heart? Removed. The spiritual weight they placed on your shoulders? Lifted. Your spirit is waking up from a sleep you didn't choose to take. Your energy is returning from places it was never meant to go. Your power is coming back home where it belongs. And now they're about to feel the full force of what happens when someone tries to cage a soul that was born to soar. If you've been feeling tired but not tired, heavy but not sad, comment, "The war is spiritual," and let your recognition break their last chain. Because what's coming next will show you exactly how their invisible attacks are about to become their visible downfall. The same energy they used to drain you, it's circling back to them now, with interest. And you're about to watch from a place of power they never imagined you'd reach. They told you to stay calm while they lit matches near your destiny. They mocked your stillness but didn't know it was holy ground. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Those family dinners where you swallowed your truth like bitter medicine. Those phone calls where you let them drain your battery and your soul. Those moments when you wanted to scream but chose silence instead, and they called it maturity. They called it peace. They called it love. But what they really called it was feeding time. See, your silence wasn't weakness, beloved. It was sacred protection. While they were busy running their mouths, spilling poison into every conversation, you were collecting data. Your spirit was taking notes. Your soul was building a case that would one day stand before the throne of heaven itself. They fed on your compliance like vampires at a blood bank, mistook your forgiveness for permission. Every time you said it's okay when it wasn't okay, every time you smiled when your heart was bleeding, every time you chose grace over confrontation, they saw weakness. But God saw warfare. Your tears were not defeat. They were deposits in a divine account that's about to pay dividends they never calculated. You remember Job, don't you? Sitting in the ash heap while his so-called friends blamed him for his own destruction. But God was keeping records. Every false accusation, every twisted scripture, every moment they tried to convince him he deserved his suffering, it was all being written down in the books of heaven. And just like Job, your silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. They thought they were winning because you weren't fighting back. They celebrated your stillness like it was their victory parade. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't see, was that your quiet was the eye of a hurricane. And hurricanes don't stay still forever. Here's the hidden energetic transaction they never understood. You gave light, they gave shadow. You offered love, they returned manipulation. You extended trust, they handed back betrayal wrapped in false concern. But the universe, your God, he's been keeping a ledger. And now he's reversing the flow. Every ounce of energy they stole from you is being extracted from their peace. Every moment they made you question your sanity is being returned as confusion in their own minds. Every night they caused you to lose sleep is coming back as restlessness in their spirits. The currency is changing hands, and they don't even know they're bankrupt yet. You see, they thought your forgiveness was free. They assumed your kindness had no limit, no cost, no consequence. They treated your heart like an all-you-can-eat buffet, coming back for seconds, thirds, demanding more while never paying the check. But God's been keeping tabs. And the bill? It's astronomical. Remember David hiding in caves while Saul hunted him? The future king of Israel, anointed by God himself, running for his life from a jealous monarch who couldn't stand his calling. But David didn't retaliate. He had chances, moments when he could have ended Saul with one swift move. Instead, he chose restraint. That restraint wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. Because David understood something his enemies never grasped. When God fights for you, you don't need to swing a single fist. Your silence was the setup for their karma. Every time they pushed, and you didn't push back. You were setting a trap they couldn't see. Every moment they attacked, and you responded with grace. You were laying foundation stones for a justice system they never knew existed. Your stillness was positioning. Your patience was preparation. And now the trap is springing. You weren't sleeping through their attacks. Chosen one. You were waiting for the heavens to finish counting receipts. You weren't being passive, you were being precise. Because God's timing isn't human timing, and His justice isn't earthly justice. When the Creator of the universe decides to settle accounts, it doesn't come with advance notice. It doesn't send warning letters. It just arrives. Like dawn breaking after the longest night. Like spring erupting after the harshest winter. You weren't sleeping. You were waiting for the heavens to finish counting receipts. And those receipts? They're detailed. Every snide comment they made about your faith. Every time they rolled their eyes at your dreams. Every moment they questioned your worth while benefiting from your sacrifice. Every instance they called your spiritual gifts too much while secretly wishing they had what you carry. All of it. Documented. Filed. Waiting for the perfect moment to be presented as evidence in a court they never knew they'd face. Your silence was never submission. It was subtraction. You were removing yourself from their equation so God could solve it without interference. Your stepping back wasn't retreat. It was making room for divine intervention. They mistook your withdrawal for defeat, but you were just clearing the battlefield so heaven could work. And now they're about to discover what happens when you mess with someone whose silence was actually a prayer, whose tears were actually seeds, whose patience was actually a weapon they never saw coming. The energy is shifting. The tide is turning. The silence they once fed on is about to become the very thing that starves them of the peace they never deserved. If your silence was the spell breaker, comment, "God kept my seat reserved." Because what's coming next will show you exactly how their feast is about to become their famine and how your wilderness is about to become their wasteland. Part 4. Karma has eyes, and it never loses direction. They called it just drama. God called it evidence. They said it was just a joke. Heaven wrote it down in ink. You know what they don't tell you about karma? It's not some mystical boomerang floating in the cosmos, waiting to maybe, possibly, one day circle back. Nah, beloved, karma has GPS. It has surveillance. It has a photographic memory and a law degree from the University of Divine Justice. And right now, it's tracking down every single person who dared to plant poison in your garden. See, they thought they were slick, thought they could whisper your name in dark corners, twist your truth into their lies, turn your healing into their entertainment. They planted seeds of mockery while you were planting seeds of prayer. They sowed gossip while you sowed grace. But here's what they didn't calculate: every seed they buried in shadow is about to bloom in broad daylight. And the harvest is coming. Remember when they laughed at your boundaries, called you too sensitive when you protected your peace? Heaven was taking notes. When they rolled their eyes at your spiritual awakening, calling it weird or too much, the universe was building their case file. Every smirk, every dismissive comment, every time they tried to make you feel small, it all went into the cosmic ledger. Galatians 6-7 doesn't stutter. Chosen one. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. You want to know how karma works? It's not dramatic. It's surgical. It doesn't come crashing through their front door with sirens and flashing lights. No, karma is more sophisticated than that. It comes as the slow unraveling of everything they built on your back. Watch them now. Really watch them. See how their confidence is starting to crack, how their energy feels different, how the very people they turned against you are starting to see through their performance. That's not coincidence, baby. That's calibration. Karma doesn't miss. It just waits for the perfect angle. They thought karma came in car crashes and court dates. But karma is coming as confusion, collapse, and the silence of their own crew turning on them. See, they built their whole identity on being the ones who saw through you. They bonded over your supposed flaws, created group chats about your journey, made inside jokes about your pain. But now those same people are looking at them sideways. Because when you align with truth, you become a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. They reflect exactly what's standing in front of them. The mask is slipping. Every lie they told about you is becoming a prophecy about themselves. Called you unstable? Watch their mental health crumble. Said you were isolated? Look at how alone they're becoming. Claimed you were bitter? Feel the poison they're now choking on. The very words they used to describe you are becoming their autobiography. You ever notice how people who hurt you always end up living the life they tried to curse you with? That's not irony. That's divine redirection. What they sent toward you bounced off your protection and boomeranged back to the sender. Because when you're covered by grace, Their curses become their own cage, and they built it themselves, brick by brick. Here's the part that's going to blow your mind. They're starting to feel you even when you're not around. Your name tastes different in their mouth now. Your memory haunts their peace. They can't scroll without wondering what you're doing, can't sleep without replaying what they did. Your silence has become their loudest critic. They wanted to forget you, but they can't stop remembering what they lost. Because here's what they're realizing too late. You weren't just another person they could discard. You were a frequency, a vibration, a portal to something higher. And when they cut you off, they didn't just lose you. They lost access to the light you carried. Now they're stumbling in darkness, wondering why their world feels so dim. Joel 2:25 is activating. I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten. What they thought they took from you is being returned with interest. Every door they tried to close is being blown off its hinges. Every opportunity they blocked is being multiplied. Every relationship they poisoned is being replaced with pure gold connections. You're not just getting back what was stolen, you're getting the upgrade package. And they see it. Oh, they see it. Your glow-up is their wake-up call. Your elevation is their revelation. Your breakthrough is their breakdown. Because when a chosen one rises, the whole atmosphere shifts. And those who tried to dim your light suddenly realize they're standing in complete darkness. The tables aren't just turning, they're flipping. Their peace is becoming chaos. Their confidence is becoming confusion. Their control is becoming collapse. And the most beautiful part? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to expose them, confront them, or even think about them. Karma is handling the whole situation while you focus on your healing. This is divine efficiency at its finest. So when you see their lives start to unravel, don't feel guilty, don't feel sorry, don't rush to their rescue. This isn't cruelty, this is correction. This isn't revenge, this is restoration. The universe is simply returning the energy they put out back to where it belongs. They planted thorns and expected roses. Now they're bleeding from their own garden. But you planted love in impossible soil. You sowed kindness in hostile territory. You watered seeds with your tears and fertilized hope with your faith. Now watch your harvest come in golden, abundant, and unstoppable. Karma has eyes and it never loses direction. Drop, it's returning to sender if you feel justice is already in motion. The divine switchboard is connecting all calls back to their origin. They thought your breakdown was their breakthrough. They gathered around your tears like vultures at a feast, whispering, finally, they're cracking. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, is that every tear you shed was a prayer hitting heaven's courtroom like thunder. Your tears didn't go unnoticed. They hit the courtroom of heaven like thunder, and heaven ruled, enough. See, chosen one, you've been carrying this weight, thinking your pain was proof of abandonment, thinking God went silent when you needed him most. But let me tell you something that's going to shake your foundation and rebuild it stronger. Your tears weren't weakness. They were warfare, and God just signed the warrant. Remember Joseph in that pit? His brothers thought they buried a dreamer, but God saw a deliverer in the darkness. Same spirit, same story, different century. That's you. You were never drowning, beloved. You were descending to the depths where only the anointed can breathe. While they celebrated above ground, heaven was engineering your resurrection from below. Every betrayal was a shovel digging deeper into your purpose. Every rejection was clearing space for your elevation. Pause. Breathe that in. They put their hands on you thinking they were writing your obituary, but God was using their very wickedness as the blueprint for your deliverance. Every lie they told became a prophecy of their own falling. Every wound they inflicted became a weapon in your arsenal. They didn't just hurt you, they activated something ancient, something unstoppable. Your silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Heaven's strategy. You know what hurts the most? It wasn't the betrayal itself. It was feeling like you deserved it, like maybe you were too much, too sensitive to everything. You started questioning if your gift was actually a curse, if your discernment was just paranoia, if your heart was just too big for this cold world. Stop right there. That doubt, that self-questioning, that was their spell trying to convince you that your power was your problem. But let me break that lie right now. You were the scroll they tried to burn, but heaven sealed you in gold. Fire can't touch what God has marked as his own. Every tear you cried in private became a seed in heaven's garden. Every night you laid awake wondering why me, was actually God preparing the soil for why not you. You weren't being punished, chosen one. You were being positioned. Your pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation for divine intervention. They watched you fall and thought the show was over. But what they witnessed wasn't your ending, it was your intermission. God was orchestrating the greatest comeback in spiritual history, and your tears were the opening notes of their own destruction. See, every time they made you cry, they were actually signing their own spiritual warrant. Every tear was evidence in heaven's court. Every sleepless night was God building his case. And when the judge of all judges stood up and said enough, that's when their season of laughing ended and their season of consequences began. You thought you were alone in the fire, but you were never alone. You were just hidden for the rise. The pain you felt, that wasn't random suffering. That was divine timing activating. God used their cruelty as the very mechanism to trigger your breakthrough. Like David's sling, it wasn't the smooth stone that brought down Goliath. It was the force behind it. Your tears weren't the weapon, they were the force that launched heaven's intervention. Climax building. Right now, as you hear these words, something is shifting in the spiritual realm. The tears you cried in secret are becoming the soundtrack to their public humiliation. The prayers you whispered in pain are becoming the prophecies of their downfall. The nights you couldn't sleep are becoming the reason they'll never rest again. Your tears were not weakness, they were warfare. And God just signed the warrant. This is your moment, chosen one. This is where everything flips, where your pain becomes their problem, where your tears become their terror, where your silence becomes their sentence. You feel it, don't you? That shift in your spirit, that's not just healing, that's activation. That's God moving from defense to offense on your behalf. The same hands that comforted you in your pain are now being raised in warfare against your enemies. Soul affirmation rising. You are not the victim of their story, you are the author of their ending. The courtroom of heaven has spoken, the verdict is in, and what they meant for your destruction has become the very foundation of their demolition. If your pain has become your prophecy, write, my tears have spoken. But this is just the beginning, beloved, because when God moves from defense to offense, when your tears trigger heaven's intervention, that's when the real fireworks start. That's when their carefully built world doesn't just crack. It completely collapses. They thought they had you cornered, didn't they? Thought they could paint circles around your name, cast shadows over your light, whisper curses into the wind, and watch you wither. But here's what they never understood about messing with the chosen. When you touch what God has anointed, the universe doesn't just respond, it revolts. Right now, as I speak these words into your spirit, their own trap is closing around them like quicksand. The very pit they dug for your downfall has become their burial ground. The spell they cast, it boomeranged through the cosmos and landed right back in their living room, burning down everything they thought they built. You feel it, don't you? That shift in the air, that tremor in the spiritual realm, that's not your imagination. Beloved, that's divine mathematics calculating the interest on every tear they caused you to shed. He made a pit and digged it, and has fallen into the ditch which he made. His mischief shall return upon his own head. Psalm 7:15-16. David knew this rhythm. David felt this reversal, and now you're living it. See, they thought silence meant surrender. They mistook your stillness for weakness, your patience for powerlessness. While they were busy weaving webs in the darkness, God was quietly rewriting the algorithm of their destiny. Every thread they spun to entangle you became a noose around their own necks. The haunted are now the ones who held the candle. Their sleepless nights, that's your peace they stole coming to collect payment. Their anxiety attacks, those are the panic seeds they planted in your garden, now sprouting in their own backyard. The paranoia that follows them like a shadow, that's the darkness they tried to cast over you, but it couldn't stick to the anointed, so it bounced back and made a home in their conscience. You didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't have to plot revenge or scheme in the shadows. All you had to do was be patient, be aligned, be still, and know that God was orchestrating the greatest plot twist in spiritual history. And now the music is changing. The very people who clapped when you fell are now running from the sound of their own footsteps. The ones who celebrated your struggles are choking on the smoke of their own burning bridges. They're discovering that when you mess with God's property, the warranty doesn't cover the damage. Their relationships are cracking like old paint. Their opportunities are drying up like rivers in drought. Their reputation is melting like ice in August heat. Not because you cursed them, but because they cursed themselves the moment they decided to come for what heaven had already covered. This is the reversal, chosen one. The script has been flipped. The tables have turned, and now they're sitting on the wrong side of eternity's judgment seat, scrambling to explain why their life looks like a crime scene when all they were supposed to do was leave you alone. Joseph knew this reversal when his brothers bowed before him in Egypt. Job felt this shift when God restored double what was stolen. Elijah witnessed this justice when the prophets of Baal consumed themselves with their own fire. Your story is their story now. And here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. God didn't just reverse their spell, He amplified it. What they sent as a whisper came back as thunder. What they threw as a pebble returned as an avalanche. The energy they put into your destruction is now the very force dismantling their delusion. You see them now, don't you? Scrambling, panicking, trying to backpedal on lies that already left their mouths and took root in the world. Watching their carefully constructed facades crumble like ancient walls in an earthquake. The spell is broken, the judgment is personal, and the crowd is watching them burn in the fire they built for your soul. They wanted to see you fall. Now they're front-row witnesses to their own collapse. They wanted to watch you break. Now they're starring in their own destruction documentary. The audience they tried to turn against you is now watching them unravel in real time, and the reviews are not favorable. This isn't just karma, beloved. This is cosmic correction. This is the universe's way of saying, not my child, not on my watch, not with my anointed. Justice isn't coming. It's already here. It's sitting in their morning coffee, bitter and inescapable. It's walking in their dreams, uninvited but undeniable. It's breathing in their quiet moments, reminding them that what goes around doesn't just come around, it comes around with friends, family, and a forwarding address. The reversal is complete. The trap has turned. And you, chosen one, you get to watch from your place of peace as the very people who tried to bury you discover they were only planting seeds for their own harvest of consequences. You are the living proof that God keeps receipts. Comment, I saw the reversal, if you're witnessing their downfall right now. The universe is listening, and it's time to testify to the justice you're watching unfold. You woke up this morning and something was off. Not wrong, different. Like the air itself had changed frequency around you. Like you'd been walking through life wearing glasses that weren't your prescription, and suddenly clarity. Sharp, cutting, undeniable clarity. They told you it was paranoia when you started sensing their moves before they made them. Called you too sensitive when you could feel the poison in their praise, the daggers hidden in their smiles. But you weren't losing your mind. Chosen one, you were finding your power. That discernment they mocked, that's your spiritual radar coming online. See, what happened to you in that dark season wasn't just an attack, it was an activation. Every spell they cast, every hex they threw, every whispered curse in boardrooms and family gatherings, it all backfired. Because you can't curse what God has blessed. You can't hex what heaven has already anointed. And now you feel it, don't you? That shift in your chest, that authority in your voice, that knowing in your gut that cuts through lies like a sword through silk. You're not surviving anymore, you're governing now. Remember when David faced Goliath? The boy didn't tremble, he stepped forward with the confidence of someone who knew the fix was already in. That's you now. Same energy, same backing, same inevitable outcome. But here's where it gets wild, they can sense it too. That's why they're scrambling. That's why the fake apologies are flooding your DMs. That's why they're suddenly checking on you after months of radio silence. They feel the shift in the atmosphere around you. They know something cosmic just flipped. What once felt like fear is now just your discernment waking up. You thought humility meant making yourself smaller. Nah, beloved. Biblical humility is knowing who you are in God and walking in it without apology. Moses didn't whisper the plagues into existence. Elijah didn't politely request fire from heaven. They spoke with the authority of the Most High and watched kingdoms tremble. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to dominate in spirit. That nervous energy you've been feeling, that's not anxiety, that's anticipation. Your soul knows what your mind is still catching up to. The tables have turned. The script has flipped. The very people who tried to write you out of the story are about to watch you rewrite the entire narrative. Joseph felt this same shift in Pharaoh's prison. One day he was forgotten. The next day he was second in command. God doesn't just reverse the curse, beloved, he leaves the oil, the wisdom, the authority, the anointing that nobody can question because it's written in your DNA now. You're not haunted anymore. You're crowned. Look at your reflection lately. Really look. There's something different in your eyes. A depth that wasn't there before. A knowing that can't be taught. A peace that doesn't make sense to people still fighting wars you've already won. That's the oil, baby. That's the residue of resurrection. You died to who you used to be in that valley, and what emerged isn't just healed, it's dangerous. Dangerous to every lie they told about you. Dangerous to every limitation they tried to place on you. Dangerous to every box they tried to keep you in. The same mouth that once begged for mercy now commands mountains to move. You feel it when you walk into rooms now, don't you? How conversations shift, how energy changes, how people who used to overlook you suddenly pay attention. That's not coincidence. That's the atmosphere responding to your elevation. They thought they were teaching you a lesson. Turns out, they were just clearing your throat for prophecy. You're not imagining the power. You're reclaiming it. And the beautiful irony? Every weapon they formed against you is now backfiring in real time. Every seed of discord they planted in your garden is choking out their own harvest. They cast spells, but forgot they were dealing with someone heaven had already written in the book of life. What was meant to bury you has only multiplied your anointing. So when they ask what changed, and they will ask, tell them this: I stopped apologizing for who God made me to be. Tell them you stopped dimming your light to make their darkness feel comfortable. Tell them you finally remembered that giants fall not because David was tall, but because God aimed the stone. You're not the same person they left for dead. You're the resurrection they never saw coming. This is your season, chosen one. Not just of restoration, but of revolution. Not just healing, but authority. Not just surviving, but thriving so loud it rewrites the definition of impossible. The shift isn't coming. The shift is here. The shift is you. If your power is returning, if you feel that authority rising in your chest, if you know in your bones that everything is about to change, write "I am the shift" in the comments. Let the universe know you're ready to step into what's been waiting for your arrival. Because the old you is buried, the new you is born. And honey, they have no idea what they're about to witness. They called you delusional when you walked away from their chaos, said you were running, said you couldn't handle the heat. But what they didn't see was the fire inside you wasn't burning out, it was burning clean. While they stayed trapped in their drama, feeding off confusion and conflict, you chose silence. And that silence became their judgment. You didn't have to say a word. Your peace spoke volumes. See, there's a kind of power they never taught you about in Sunday school. It's not the power of the sword or the sharp tongue. It's the power of presence. The power of being so aligned with your truth that your very existence becomes a mirror they can't escape. And baby, that mirror is reflecting back everything they tried to hide. They thought your silence was surrender. They thought your stillness was weakness. But you were radiating something they couldn't touch, couldn't steal, couldn't manipulate. Your elevation became their exposure. Every step you took toward healing was a step away from their poison. And that distance became their prison. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. David knew this secret. When Saul was hunting him with an army, David didn't fight back with violence. He chose the cave. He chose the high ground. He chose to let God be God. And what happened? Saul's own paranoia destroyed him from the inside out. Your peace is echoing like thunder in their broken circles. They can't sleep at night because your calmness haunts them. They scroll through your energy, looking for cracks, searching for signs that you're breaking. But all they find is light. All they see is someone who chose healing over hatred, and that choice is driving them insane. Here's what they never expected. You didn't clap back, you ascended. While they were throwing stones, you were building wings. While they were digging graves for your reputation, you were planting gardens in your soul. Every insult they hurled became fertilizer for your growth. Every lie they spread became proof of their desperation. They thought they were destroying you, but they were actually revealing themselves. Your existence has become their spiritual mirror, and they can't look away. This isn't about being petty. This isn't about revenge. This is about energetic judgment, the kind that happens when light meets darkness and darkness has nowhere to hide. You became so peaceful, so centered, so aligned with your purpose that your very presence started exposing the chaos in their hearts. They tried to paint you the villain, but God turned you into a vision. Now they're watching you rise from a distance, and it's eating them alive. Not because you're flaunting your success, but because your peace is so genuine, so untouchable, that it makes their fake happiness look like what it is, a performance. Your joy doesn't need an audience. Your strength doesn't need validation. Your light doesn't need permission to shine. And that's the judgment. That's the verdict. Not courtroom drama, but cosmic justice. The universe used your healing as evidence against their hatred. Your growth became the proof of their poison. Your transformation became the testimony of their toxicity. You thought you had to defend yourself. You thought you had to fight fire with fire. But God said, "Child, just glow, just heal. Just be who I created you to be." Your authenticity will do more damage to their lies than any argument ever could. They're unraveling in silence now. That's not revenge. That's radiation from your healing. See, when you align with divine peace, you become a walking judgment. Not because you're judging anyone, but because your alignment exposes misalignment everywhere it goes. Your peace disturbs their chaos. Your clarity threatens their confusion. Your freedom triggers their captivity. And the beautiful part? You don't even have to try, you just have to be. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "Let your light shine before others." Matthew 5:16. Your light isn't just about blessing people. Sometimes your light is about exposing darkness. Sometimes your peace is about revealing war. Sometimes your healing is about showing what's still broken in others. You've become a living testimony that peace is possible, that healing is real, that freedom is available. And for people who chose to stay in their mess, your very existence is a constant reminder of what they gave up, what they rejected, what they could have had if they chose differently. Your presence is the verdict. Your peace is the judgment. Your light is the final word. They wanted to break you, but you became unbreakable. They wanted to silence you, but your silence became louder than their noise. They wanted to dim your light, but you learned to shine from the inside out, where their hands could never reach. Now they're living with the consequences of trying to destroy someone the universe was protecting. And that consequence isn't punishment, it's revelation. The revelation that when you mess with someone chosen, you're not just fighting them, you're fighting the force that chose them. So rise, chosen one, rise in your peace, rise in your light. Rise in the knowing that your healing is their judgment, your peace is their prison, and your light is the final word on everything they tried to do to you. Because sometimes the loudest victory is the quietest one. Sometimes the strongest statement is silence. Sometimes the brightest light comes from the deepest healing. My presence is the verdict, and your verdict is already written in the stars. They thought they were casting spells on you, but baby, they were casting judgment on themselves. Every hex they threw, every curse they whispered, every ritual of rejection they performed in the shadows of their own bitter hearts, it all bounced off you, like light off a mirror, and landed right back in their laps. You felt it, didn't you? That heavy weight pressing down on your spirit, making you question if maybe you really were cursed. Maybe you really were the problem. Maybe there was something dark about you that attracted all this pain, all this betrayal, all this relentless targeting. But that weight wasn't yours to carry. See, when Pharaoh touched Moses' people, he didn't curse them, he cursed Egypt. When Haman plotted against Mordecai, he didn't destroy the righteous, he built his own gallows. When they came for Job, thinking God would abandon him, they didn't break the faithful, they exposed the accuser. You were never the curse, beloved. You were the consequence of their choices. Let that sink in. Every time they pointed fingers at you, calling you difficult, dramatic, too sensitive, too much, they were pointing at their own reflection. Every spell they tried to cast was really them signing their own spiritual warrant. They thought they were hexing you, but they were writing their own cosmic eviction notice. You see, divine ones carry something the darkness can't touch, immunity wrapped in purpose. When they tried to curse you, it was like trying to curse the ocean with a teacup of poison. The ocean doesn't get poisoned, it dilutes the poison until it disappears. You weren't hexed, you were hidden, not broken, preserved. All those nights you lay awake wondering what you did wrong, replaying conversations, analyzing every word you spoke, every boundary you set. Every time you said no to their manipulation, you were never the villain in that story. You were the hero they couldn't write out of the script. And now, now the plot is twisting in ways they never saw coming. Because here's what they didn't understand about messing with the chosen. We don't just survive their spells, we become the spell breakers. We don't just endure their curses, we become the cure. Every weapon they formed against us becomes evidence of our anointing. Watch them now. Watch how their own energy is eating them alive. Watch how the very lies they told about you are now the chains around their own necks. Watch how the pits they dug for you became the graves for their own reputation. This isn't revenge, baby. This is revelation. They thought they could speak death over your dreams, your relationships, your future. But when you carry divine DNA, their words don't have jurisdiction over your destiny. They can curse the ground you walk on, but they can't curse the God who walks with you. You didn't just survive their spell, you became the spell breaker for everyone else still trapped in their web of manipulation. Feel that power rising in your chest right now. Because you were never their victim, you were their teacher. You were never their target, you were their test. And they failed spectacularly. They thought they could diminish your light, but all they did was prove how bright you really shine when surrounded by their darkness. You were the judgment wrapped in mercy, the test they thought they could cheat. And now, the whole room sees who was divine all along. Every person who watched them come for you and said nothing. Every friend who chose their side over truth. Every family member who believed their lies without asking your side of the story, they're all witnessing the reversal now. They're watching your enemies choke on their own poison while you rise like incense above their smoke. This is your resurrection morning. They drew circles around you, thinking they could contain your power. But chosen ones don't get contained, we get concentrated. Every barrier they built around you just intensified your anointing. Every spell they cast just amplified your spiritual frequency. And now their spells are backfiring so hard, they're running from their own shadows. The curse was never yours to break. It was theirs to create. You were never the curse, beloved. You were the consequence of what happens when the unrighteous touch the untouchable. You were the mirror they couldn't break, the truth they couldn't twist, the light they couldn't dim. And that beautiful soul is exactly why they're falling apart right now. They didn't just curse your name, they opened a door. And what's pouring through now, it's not your wrath, it's God's. You felt it, didn't you? That moment when their words hit your spirit like acid rain, burning through everything you thought was sacred about yourself. They spoke death over your dreams, whispered poison into rooms where your name should have been honored. They took your trust, your love, your open heart, and they weaponized it. Made you the villain in a story they wrote with their own guilt. But here's what they didn't understand about spiritual law. Beloved, when you curse what God has blessed, you don't dim their light, you redirect the lightning. Every word they spoke in darkness is now echoing louder than they ever intended. Not in your life, but in theirs. Pause, feel that shift. See, they thought they were casting spells, building hexes, throwing spiritual rocks at your destiny, but what they really did was open a portal between their mouth and the very throne of judgment. And now what's pouring through that door isn't your pain coming back to you, it's their harvest returning to them, multiplied by the sacred mathematics of divine justice. You remember Job? How his so-called friends sat in a circle, pointing fingers, explaining his suffering like they had the manual to God's mysteries. But when the dust settled, when the truth cut through their religious noise, who was restored? Who was vindicated? The one they tried to bury under their explanations and accusations. The flood is building now. They built a dam to stop your destiny, stone by stone, lie by lie. Convinced themselves they were protecting something, their position, their comfort, their version of truth. But dams don't stop God's rivers, they just redirect them. And now it's their house being washed away while you stand on higher ground, watching the very foundation they built on deception crumble like sand castles at high tide. This isn't random chaos, chosen one. This isn't coincidence wearing a cosmic costume. This is sacred math, spiritual physics. What goes up in rebellion against God's anointed doesn't just come down, it comes down with interest, with compound consequences, with the full weight of heaven's ledger balancing the books. Feel the rumble beneath their feet. You were silent for so long, weren't you? Watching them celebrate your supposed downfall, toasting to your tears, building monuments to your mistakes. You bit your tongue until it bled spiritual blood. You swallowed your truth until your throat closed with the weight of unspoken vindication. But your silence wasn't weakness, it was the eye of the storm, gathering power, building pressure. Now the levees are breaking. The spell they thought they cast on you has boomeranged back with the force of a divine tsunami. Their lies are drowning in their own contradictions. Their schemes are collapsing under the weight of their own complexity. And they're looking around, confused, asking why their world is suddenly underwater when the sky was clear just yesterday. This is the spellback, and it's biblical. Remember David? How Saul threw spears at the anointed, convinced that killing God's chosen would secure his throne, but every spear he threw came back to pierce his own peace, his own sanity, his own kingdom. The very energy he used to hunt David became the force that haunted his own nights. You were the altar they tried to sacrifice on. They came with their knives of criticism, their fires of false accusation, thinking they could offer up your reputation to their own insecurities. But altars belong to God, and when thieves try to steal from the sacred, the temple doesn't just crack, it collapses on their heads. And the fire is not yours to hold back anymore. This flood that's coming for them isn't your responsibility to dam up. It's not your job to save them from the spiritual physics they set in motion. You don't owe your umbrella to the people who prayed for storms over your life. You don't owe shelter to those who tried to leave you homeless in your own destiny. The curse reversal is complete. What they meant for evil, God is turning for good, not just in your life, but in the cosmic courtroom where their case against you has been thrown out with prejudice. The verdict is in. You were never the problem. You were the proof that light doesn't negotiate with darkness, it overwhelms it. Feel that power rising in your chest. Their spells are breaking against your blessing like waves against granite. Their hexes are returning to sender with no forwarding address. And you're not just surviving the flood, you're walking on water while they're learning to swim in the deep end of their own consequences. This is your moment of sacred vindication, not because you wished harm on anyone, but because you stood in truth long enough for truth to stand up for you. The spiritual mathematics are adding up in your favor. Compound interest on every tear you shed in secret, every prayer you whispered in pain. The flood has begun, and you are rising. The water is rising. Comment, the flood has begun. If you feel the return storm has already hit the ones who tried to silence your soul. But this flood, this is just the beginning of your restoration. Because when God clears your enemies, He's making space for something magnificent. They called you weak when you didn't fight back, called you broken when you stayed silent, called you crazy when you spoke your truth. But here's what they couldn't see, chosen one. God wasn't letting you defend yourself because you weren't the defendant. You were the evidence. Every tear that fell in secret, filed. Every word that cut your soul, recorded. Every night you questioned why you survived, what should have destroyed you. That was an accident. That was divine preservation. You didn't just survive, beloved. You were preserved. Not for pity, but for the proof. See, they thought your silence was surrender, thought your stillness was stupidity, but God was building something in that quiet space they couldn't touch. While they were busy celebrating what they thought was your defeat, the Almighty was crafting you into a living, breathing courtroom. Every scar became evidence. Every breakdown became documentation. Every moment you wanted to give up but didn't, that became the testimony that would later destroy their lies. You know what Job didn't know while he was sitting in those ashes, scraping his wounds? That his pain was being recorded as evidence against the accuser. That his endurance was writing checks his enemies would have to cash with compound interest. The man lost everything, but God kept him breathing because his survival would become the sentence. And now you understand why your hands were tied when you wanted to strike back. Why your voice cracked when you tried to defend yourself. Why every attempt to explain your truth felt like screaming into a void. God wasn't abandoning you in those moments, precious soul. He was positioning you, making you untouchable to their weapons so you could be undeniable as His witness. They painted you as the villain, didn't they? Twisted your reactions into evidence of your instability, used your pain as proof of your problems. But what they didn't realize is that every lie they told about you was being cataloged. Every alliance they built against you was being noted. Every smile they wore while stabbing you, photographed by eternity. You asked yourself 1,000 times, why didn't I say more? Why didn't I fight harder? Why didn't I defend myself better? Because, my beautiful survivor, your survival was always going to be the strongest defense. Your peace was always going to be the loudest argument. Your joy was always going to be the most devastating evidence. See, when David was running from Saul in those caves, hiding like a fugitive, he didn't know he was being preserved for a crown. When Joseph was rotting in that prison for a crime he didn't commit, he couldn't see that his silence was protecting his destiny. When Elijah was hiding in that cave, feeling like the only one left, God whispered, I have 7,000 who haven't bowed. And you, chosen one, you were one of those 7,000 who refused to bow, even when bowing would have been easier, even when silence cost you relationships, even when standing in your truth made you stand alone. God kept you alive not just to survive their attack, but to outlive their lies. Now they have to watch you glow in the light they swore you'd never touch. Now they have to witness the peace they said you'd never find. Now they have to see the joy they thought they killed, resurrected and radiating from your very presence. You are the silent evidence, beloved. But now, your peace is loud, your healing is thunderous, your joy is deafening. And their shame, it can't hide from daylight anymore. Every room you walk into becomes a courtroom where their lies are on trial. Every smile you wear becomes a verdict they can't appeal. Every breath you take is a gavel striking against their false testimony. They thought they buried you, but God was just planting you. They thought they silenced you, but your very existence is now the loudest sermon about divine justice this world has ever heard. This is why you're still here, warrior. Not because you're lucky, because you're chosen. Not because you're strong, because you're protected. Not because you survived, because you were preserved to be the living proof that what the enemy means for evil, God will use for evidence. Your story isn't over, beloved. Your testimony is just beginning to speak, and everyone who counted you out, they're about to find out why God kept the witness alive. If your survival is starting to speak louder than their stories, if your peace is beginning to prosecute their lies, if you're finally understanding that you weren't kept alive to stay quiet, comment, God kept me to be the proof. Because the trial isn't over, chosen one. The verdicts are still coming in, and you're the evidence that's about to change everything. But here's what happens next when God's witnesses finally understand their assignment. They put you in the back row, thinking God forgot, made you sit in silence while they took the stage, pushed you to the margins while they claimed the spotlight. But what they didn't know, chosen one, is that heaven was setting the stage for the flip. Every time they overlooked you at that family gathering, every promotion they gave to someone less qualified, every invitation they forgot to send, every conversation that went quiet when you walked in, they thought they were writing you out of the story. But God was positioning you for the plot twist of a lifetime. See, the rejected stone doesn't become the cornerstone by accident. It becomes the cornerstone because the master builder sees what human eyes miss. While they were busy choosing pretty stones for decoration, God was looking for the one strong enough to hold up the entire structure. You remember Joseph, don't you? Thrown in a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, forgotten in prison, last in line for everything. But when Pharaoh needed someone to save the nation, guess who was suddenly first on the list? The one who'd been overlooked so long, he'd forgotten what recognition felt like. That's your story brewing, beloved. The same hands that pushed you down are about to watch you rise to heights they can't even reach. The same voices that said you'd never amount to anything are about to go silent as your name gets called to the front. This isn't just karma catching up. This is divine reversal in real time. Remember when they passed you over for that leadership position, gave it to their friend instead? You cried, didn't you? Questioned your worth, wondered what was wrong with you. But heaven was protecting you from leading something that was about to fall apart anyway. While they're drowning in that mess, you're being prepared for something 10 times greater. Remember when they excluded you from those circles, made you feel like you didn't belong, left you eating lunch alone while they plotted together? They thought they were punishing you. But God was pulling you away from contamination, isolating you so their poison couldn't touch your purpose. Every closed door was divine protection. Every rejection was heavenly redirection. Now watch this, chosen one. Watch how the universe flips the script so hard it gives everyone whiplash. Those conference tables you were banned from, you're about to own the company. Those social circles that shut you out, they're about to beg for your attention. Those family members who treated you like the black sheep, they're about to need the very gifts they once mocked. The last shall be first, not as a consolation prize, as a divine declaration. But here's where it gets beautiful and brutal at the same time. This flip isn't just about your elevation, it's about their education. They're about to learn what happens when you underestimate who God calls chosen. They're about to discover that the person they discarded was the person heaven was preparing to display. The trial is over, chosen one. The verdict has been delivered, not by human courts, but by the ancient scales that weigh every heart, measure every motive, and balance every betrayal with divine precision. You were never the broken one. You were the breakthrough waiting to happen. You were never the cursed one. You were the chosen one learning to walk in blessing. Every spell they tried to cast, every curse they whispered in the dark, it bounced off the armor of your anointing and boomeranged back to its sender with compound interest. Listen to me, warrior of light. What you endured wasn't random suffering. It was sacred testimony. Every tear was a prayer. Every wound was a witness. Every moment you thought you were dying, you were actually being born into something they could never touch, never steal, never destroy. The door is closing now, behind you, forever. You hear that sound? That's the final click of the lock on the chapter where they had access to your peace, where they could manipulate your mind, where they could poison your purpose. That door isn't just closing, it's being sealed by divine decree. There is no key that can reopen it, no apology that can unlock it. No amount of fake tears or fabricated change can budge it even an inch. You are walking in a new direction now, toward the light they said you'd never see, toward the peace they swore you'd never find, toward the joy they thought they murdered in its sleep. The Lord promises in Isaiah 54:17, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Every curse they spoke, condemned. Every trap they set, destroyed. Every alliance they built against you, scattered like dust in the wind of divine justice." This is your Romans 8:28 moment, beloved. What they meant for evil, God is turning into evidence of His goodness. What they designed for your destruction is becoming the foundation of your destiny. Every attack was actually an appointment with your breakthrough. So I need you to declare this with me, chosen one. Not just in your mind, but in your spirit. Let it echo in the chambers of your soul. I am the chosen one. The spell is broken. The curse is reversed. What was meant to destroy me has become the proof of my destiny. Say it again. Feel it in your bones. Let it rewire every doubt they planted, every lie they watered, every fear they fed. I am the chosen one. The spell is broken. The curse is reversed. What was meant to destroy me has become the proof of my destiny. If this message found you at the exact moment you needed to hear it, that's not coincidence, that's divine appointment. If these words are making your spirit tremble with recognition, that's not emotion, that's activation. Share this message, not just because someone else needs to hear it, but because your testimony has power, your survival has substance. Your story has the ability to break chains off other chosen ones who are still walking in confusion about their identity. When you share this truth, you're not just spreading a message, you're spreading a frequency, the frequency of freedom, the vibration of victory, the sound of chains breaking in real time. Comment, the spell is broken, if you can feel the shift happening right now, if you can sense the old patterns dissolving and the new reality crystallizing. Because when chosen ones unite in their declaration, the spiritual atmosphere changes, strongholds crumble, curses reverse, and what was meant to separate us becomes the very thing that connects us in victory. This isn't the end of your story, beloved. This is the end of their power over your story. The spell is broken, the curse is reversed, and you were never under their magic. You were always under his protection.